Yo, Sleepy Sheepy here. Today we're going to be looking at an intelligence hybrid build. So that means we're going to be running a melee weapon in our main hand as well as an offhand staff with a number of different sorceries that we can use, just kind of mixing things up. And I find this to be extremely potent. It works very well in single and multi-opponent situations. As demonstrated here, we can see the effectiveness of the gravity missile as a way to say hello to multiple friends at the same time. We'll also be able to use the versatility of the melee and sorceries in one-on-one situations where we can effectively Uno reverse card our opponent as a roll catch, swap over to our main hand katana, do a nice Ash of War, follow it up with a weapon swap for the chase down, and it's GG's. So we'll be running a cold Great Katana in our main hand. We also have the option to switch over to a cold Milady, which I find to be quite nice. And then for chase downs or latent players, we have the Pada as well as the backhand blade. And if we need hyper armor, we have access to a magic infused Zweihander with Waves of Darkness, and just an honorary spot for Moonveil in our back pocket if we need it. So those will be the weapons we're going to be swapping around between. Mostly we'll be running the Great Katana as well as the Milady. So for the Great Katana, I find that double slash is actually extremely nice. Works very well as a roll catch if your opponent rolls after an initial poke that comes from either a running attack or a crouching attack. So that's going to be strong, but you'll also see me running Sword Dance on it, which is also strong because Sword Dance is always strong. And then we have the Milady. Also, this will have Sword Dance on it, and I did run that with Spinning Slash as well, but I think Sword Dance is probably the best just because the forward momentum and hyper armor is really nice as an option for the Milady. As for our offhand, the sorceries we have access to are going to be mostly focused around the gravitational missile, which has two different options for it. You can either send it out into the area around you, or you can free aim it at the ground and cause it to explode instantly. So both are great options. If you cast it just into the middle of a room, then I recommend using Collapsing Star to pull opponents into it. That has great synergy, so a strong recommendation there. And then if you need some hyper armor, we have Gavel of Hyema. Carrion Piercer's just always a fun one to have. Magic Glint Blade, not bad either. Miriam's Vanishing is also nice, and you can kind of chain cast that into a Dula's Moonblade, which is a good way to catch someone's roll. And yeah, that's pretty much going to cover the sorceries we'll be using. I don't run sorcery builds that often, but when I do, I'm reminded that they're just so strong and they have so much versatility. So running all this together just results in a great time overall. If you have any questions about the build, definitely let me know in the comments. If you wouldn't mind considering subscribing, I would appreciate it. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump into the showcase. Oh, I almost forgot, but I do want to showcase just the different setup we have for our armor as well as our stats. So pretty standard, we're running 115 poise, which is a great breakpoint. We also have the Shard of Alexander and the Grave Mass Talisman. If you want to go for more of a casting setup, you can switch this for another Grave Talisman, which is quite strong, or if you want to increase your casting speed, you can use the Radagon icon. So really mixing and matching I find to be good, but this kind of covers all your bases where you're pretty tanky because you have 115 poise, you also boost your sorceries, and you also boost your Ash of War. So it really just kind of complements the full gamut of the build. This is 139 with 20 strength and 20 dex, so important notes there, and just 42 endurance for the weight capacity of everything that we want to run for this. 50 intelligence seems to be more than enough, but if you wanted to run this at 150 and hit 70 intelligence, that's totally an option too. Okay, so now to actually start the showcase, we'll be looking at our first invasion. This was an absolute doozy. I say that a lot, but this one I very much mean, because I nearly died so many times, and it was just so close on separate occasions that it was quite scary. So you can see here why it might be easy to die very quickly. We're going to be on this ledge with a long fall, and we can see here the gravitational missile. Paired with gravity just works quite well to catch one player quite early. So we do need to look out for Taker's Flame as well as some incantations from the Phantom that's also hanging out there. And ideally we'd like to get the Phantom before the host. This situation doesn't really call for being picky and choosy, but honestly, it's the way I like to play the game. So here we need to look out for some lightning. We nearly fall quite close to the edge there, and we're going to be seeing a lot more lightning as well. So just so many opportunities to get knocked off this ledge, and so many opportunities to free aim your rolls, because really that's the only way to stay alive, and also just not panic roll. So we decide that it's not great to stay up there. They have a lot of FP, it seems, and a hunter has just come into the world. So we're going to pass and roll down to the one safe area we have below us. In the meantime, we will be seeing the Phantom getting hit by the PvE. I believe they got hit with Emit Force from one of the knights that lives up there, so that was great to see, and we can focus on these two players here. So the blue is casting some incantations with that new hammer. It's pretty scary. It does a lot of damage and we need to respect it, so we're going to try to use corners to give ourselves space to heal. We throw out a Gavel of Hyema, which is a nice way to just work with the corner and potentially, you know, hide our startup, which works out quite well. And we do need to back up a little bit. Again, we're trying to use these walls as cover because there's a lot of things that are coming our way. And we see the blue here switch over to a shield poke setup with a bleed-infused Antspur Rapier. This is pretty scary. It does a lot of damage. It does rot and blood loss simultaneously, which can be tough. So we go ahead and go for Sword Dance. Unfortunately, the full thing misses, but we decide to bravely mash with almost no HP and Scarlet Rot. And it takes us a second to really figure out what's going on, but we do manage to heal our Scarlet Rot with like 4 HP left. You will have noticed, perhaps, that the host got a little laggy, and we do get the disconnect. I don't believe that that was intentional. It seemed like, you know, just bad latency, but it does allow us to move on to our next invasion. For those folks that didn't decide to skip the entire intro, which is understandable, this was showcased in the intro just as a way to demonstrate how useful Gravitational Missile is, especially when you have iframes as you spawn in, and when you have just a bunch of people that are really aggressive. So it makes sense to get the timing down. It takes a little while to just figure out if you have enough time or not, and this is a good reason to run the Radagon icon if you want to just cast a little bit faster, but I do find that it's not difficult to get off, and when it does connect with the ground and multiple players, you'll be doing a lot of damage and also just give yourself some breathing room, which is really nice. Unfortunately, these players do a good job of staying alive most of the time. However, the third Gravitational Missile directly into the ground is going to catch all of the players and delete one of the Phantoms. So that allows us to be in a one-on-one situation here. We go for a random Vanishing. I wouldn't say it's super helpful, but it is kind of fun to just throw it out, and I think it's good to explore these new spells and sorceries and whatnot. We do swap over to the Milady, which is really nice against players that are running low poise. You'll notice that that one player was pretty low on health, and then we were able to shut them down very fast with just some jumping attacks on the two-handed moveset of the Milady. I do go for a Gavel of Hyema. Unfortunately, I get poise broken in the process, so it does have hyper armor, but I'm not sure if it was just too early in the startup or if the jumping attack just did enough poise damage to just kind of stop that from happening, but we're able to mash a little bit with the Milady, and again, due to the low poise, we're just winning out on quite a few trades. Our next invasion will be hanging out in the storehouse, and we do have a player that's a big fan of using pots, so I don't really hate that. I feel like they're funny, and they have a long enough startup animation where, you know, you can very quickly react to them. They do a very good job of free aiming, however, it does unfortunately go over my head, I guess fortunately for me, and we go ahead and use our Gravitational Missile at the ground. Now, this player is doing a good job of both turtling and using their guard counter. We're going to try to Sword Dance and don't manage to get it to land, and that's going to be one of the reasons I definitely enjoy the double slash. It just, you won't encounter situations where you miss that often. Usually you'll catch at least one of the double slashes, and you'll oftentimes get the cold proc in the process. However, we do manage to finish off that Phantom and turn this into a 2v1. And I should mention that this has one of the most unique endings out of any invasion I've had in a long time. Something that almost never happens. So I hope you'll stick around to at least the end of this invasion. Now, we do go for another Gravitational Missile, and we can see just how useful it is for zoning. We weren't really trying to hit the ground in that moment, but we kind of wanted to separate ourselves from the host and the Phantom, and that's a very good tactic I would recommend, is to just try to put a Gravitational Missile into the middle of the room between the host and the Phantom, and players aren't going to want to run into it, so you can get some alone time with, you know, either the Phantom or the host, and it's just very strong as a way to play keep out a little bit with different players. We do see a lot more pots coming in. We need to heal our sleep. That player, yeah, firm pot enjoyer. You definitely don't see it that often, especially with free aims from Phantom, so that was cool to see. And we're going to go ahead and punish one of the pot throws with a jumping attack followed up by a light attack. Now, they do go for a neutral jump and we whiff our attack, but we're still in quite a good spot here, and as they stay aggressive, we do land a jumping attack. Now, it's just a one-on-one with the host, so we're going to go ahead and switch over to the Milady. I definitely liked that as a way to finish opponents. I think the just kind of big sweeping swings of the Great Katana is nice for multi-opponent situations, and then the utility of the Milady is just quite strong when it's a one-on-one situation. So we go ahead and throw out a gravity missile as a hunter gets summoned into the world, and here we get a disconnect. And normally this is where it ends, but we decided to just respawn into the same area. We tried to invade there again, and we got the same player who was just AFK. So we do get a satisfying finish against that player. They really hadn't moved very far, and they hadn't healed. So an odd moment there for sure, but it's just so uncommon, I would say, to actually get the finish like that on a player that disconnects from you. Moving on, we're going to have a group of 3 again in the storehouse, and we're going to be using a couple different spells to just kind of get them aggressive. You can see that I did change up my spell loadout a little bit throughout the course of this, but yeah, I recommend just kind of playing with your different spell setups and spell order, and I think you can come up with a lot of good stuff. So we go for Gavel of Haema. Unfortunately, we're out of FP for the next one, and we see Swift Slash coming in one after the other. So usually once you see the first Swift Slash, you see about 12 more. So it's really a good idea to just back off, try to get some PvE involved, just hope that they get poise broken at some point, because running into Swift Slash and really just dealing with it is such a chore. I know that they nerfed it in the patch. Doesn't really feel like that to me. It feels very strong. I mean, I guess it was very strong before too, but I don't know if they did enough. So we are going to go swap over to Moonveil, just see if we can get off some of our L2s. This is a really hard group of players to approach. They've got so much different stuff coming at you. I mean, Swift Slash just being in the mix is hard to approach in general, but really backhand blades, because how quickly they can catch up to you makes them a challenge. So fortunately, this player does get a little aggressive, a little bit bold, and we managed to throw a pot and get them frostbitten, which is going to be nice, especially because we've switched over to the Pata, which does not have a frost infusion. You definitely can use a frost infusion on it, but for me, I would say the magic infusion was pretty nice, and you do get true combos a lot, which is also very nice. The running heavy into heavy attack is still true for this weapon specifically, which is just classic from software. Unfortunately, we're not able to get the finish on the Phantom here, and the Swift Slash Enjoyer does start coming in with both incantations and Swift Slashes. So we need to look out. There's a pulley crossbow in the mix as well, but we do see the Phantom Swift Slash off ledge, which at least gives us a little bit of time alone with this player with the Great Shield. And we do see some incantations from the PvE come in. That connects as we get a guard break, and that just works out, allowing us to turn this into a 2v1. Now, this player has switched away from Swift Slash. Either they're out of FP or just decided they wanted to play more honestly, but that allows us the 4 seconds required to finish them off and switch back over to something like a Great Katana. Now, we do need to find the host, so we're going to switch over to where we catch up with them. We toss a few fan daggers and begin the process of just kind of catching up and doing some damage. We go for our gravitational missile into the floor. It's a really funny and fairly consistent roll catch, like if you just gravitational missile in their face when you think they're going to you know, either roll away or just not attack you. And then we switch over to the Pata for just the final slash. Our next invasion is going to be another good one. Here we're going to be using the utility of the Zweihander with Waves of Darkness. It's always strong, it's always been strong, it always will be strong, and it just allows you to deal with a lot of pressure in a way that you normally can't. So we get a decent amount of damage in. We also use gravitational missile occasionally. It's really nice in a situation like this where everybody's clustered together and it's very hard to react to, especially when people are quite aggressive. And we'll swap over to Moonveil as well, just to get a quick cheeky L2 in. And yeah, we have so many good different high damage options at our disposal. We can really see that with both the Zweihander as well as Moonveil, as well as gravitational missile, and just the other weapons, the other options are also very strong. So they also have Moonveil in the mix, but we're able to land our full Ash of War here, and we can see some latency there, but we're able to finish off that player. And this is why I would say Zweihander with Waves of Darkness is kind of a must. It's just you know, when you've got that pressure on you, there are a few things that are that effective at shutting it down. Here we do see the host get caught by the PvE. The little, I don't know, slug type thing falls on its head, and this player needs to roll away. They've got a great bow out, so that was useful potentially in a multi-opponent situation, but it's going to be pretty tricky for them to swap with the pressure of a Pata coming behind them. So we managed to get the finish, and we're able to move on with our day. This one is actually going to be a 2v1, but it's going to function more as duels, I would say, and this just was some interactions that I felt were super clean. So I was very happy about this backstab. We swap over to Moonveil. They actually do manage to roll it. We weren't actually trying to get a heavy attack there, but just so happened it went like that. We dodged their attack with the Gugs and managed to get them frostbitten, then get a nice roll catch, and we're all set to go. At this point, we are ready for the host to come into the world, so it's going to take us a second to find them, but here they are on their jolly way running towards us, which we love to see. It's always nice when you don't have to play chase down against a solo host. And here we're going to be going for some running attacks, and then we get a nice neutral jump. Again, we're seeing a player running a Colossal Sword, but we're able to punish that again with a backstab. And then here we can see Carrion Piercer as a great way to finish that player. So 2 players flawless in a row with you know, Gugs, which is, you know, a pretty strong setup and one that you can't really trade with. So that was nice to see. Here we can see the utility of Double Slash. So this was not particularly challenging invasion, but I think it's worth noting. Just, you know, you spawn in and you've got multiple players on you. You can use Gravity Missile, but you can also use Double Slash on the Great Katana. And if you go for the full thing and they stay aggressive, you can definitely finish off players, especially if they have low vigor. And then here, unfortunately, this player is going to be heavy rolling, so the roll catch is not too difficult with the Double Slash, but it just works out quite well. Next up we have, I mean, it's an invasion, but it's really just a very happy moment that makes me enjoy From Software games. So this player just keeps getting punished for their Estus with a backstab, but here we get the falling backstab due to the PvE, and we can see that it takes them like a minute to die. I die right away, but then they get a second fall animation where they actually get finished. So a funny moment there, and one that I just wanted to include for fun. Next up we have a 2v1, and this one, I was just really happy with the way that it ended. We have a player that's kind of latent, hanging out in the back, and they're just swinging away with their Moonveil, occasionally going for their Ash of War. We'll be throwing out some double slashes, and we can see the effectiveness of that here, and just the wild swings from our opponent with the Moonveil just started rubbing us the wrong way, I guess, a little bit. So we go ahead and heal that blood, and then we get back topped off. We can see them go for their Ash of War as they pulled out the two-handed moveset, and they really just keep swinging. Fortunately, they do start rolling away, which means we can punish that with the Gravitational Missile. We don't manage to land our Double Slash, but we begin to chase down with just some mix-up of either running lights and running heavy attacks. We don't get it connect, but finally we've been hit with Moonveil too many times, so we just go for a quick weapon swap and manage to finish off that opponent. And that brings us to the duel portion of our showcase. Our first opponent will be running Power Stance Straight Swords. Eventually they're going to go ahead and buff their weapon first though, so we're going to use this time to get in just a little bit of chip damage with the Swift Glintstone Shard, and then begin pressuring with the Great Katana. So they go for some L1s that we definitely need to avoid, and we delay a heavy attack which does catch our opponent, and I find heavy attacks with the Great Katana to be excellent for this. Now we do swap over to a Milady and get the Frost proc, which does allow us to finish off our opponent. Our next opponent is going to be running the Sword of Night, which does have the nasty ability to just kind of roll catch you continuously with the Ash of War, so we'll need to look out for that. Fortunately, they go ahead and mash into our Ash of War, which is Double Slash, which works quite well on the Great Katana, especially after a poke attack, and then we go ahead and throw out Gravitational Missile. It doesn't connect, but we throw it out into the arena, and this time we use the Gravitational Pull to just get our opponent guard broken and finish them off with the missile. Our next opponent is going to be running a Claymore, so we'll need to look out for the Hyper Armor, especially as we're using our Milady, but we do have the advantage that they're running somewhat low poise, so our ability to poise break them is going to be quite good. Now, we do go ahead and throw out a Gravitational Missile. They do a good job of rolling this, and we need to roll in as they go for another attack with their Claymore, but this time we're prepared with Collapsing Stars, and we do pull them into the Gravitational Missile. It looks like they're out of range, but the AoE is quite large, so we're able to get the finish. Again, we'll be seeing our opponent running a Sword of Night, and here is going to be a good example of just the variety of different spells and incantations you can use, as well as the melee. So they do a good job of getting in quite a bit of damage early on, but we can begin to aggress with the Great Katana. We set up a Magic Glint Blade, and that combos nicely into a poke with the sword, and then a follow-up with the Carrion Piercer. So altogether, does a lot of damage, and it's hard to fight against. Next up, our opponent is going to be running Royal Knight's Resolve on a backhand blade, so we need to look out for that for sure. Bravely, we mash into it with Milady, knowing that they have somewhat little poise, and that allows us to trade quite effectively, despite the fact that they're getting buffs with their successive attacks. And then, as we expect them to run in for an attack, we go for Gravitational Missile and finish them off. Our next opponent is going to be running the Smith's Grip Shield in their offhand and then a Sword Spear in their main hand. We'll definitely need to look out for the Smith's Grip Shield, as that would combo quite well into their main hand weapon. They go for their Ash of War pretty early on, but we're able to trade pretty effectively with the Milady, especially since we're getting a nice Frost buildup. And here we can see with the heavy attack that the Frost buildup does pay off, and we back up, swap over to Moonveil real quick, and just kind of see if they're in their menu. It seems like perhaps they were, and we're able to get the finish. Our final opponent will be running a main hand greatsword as well as a staff in the offhand, so kind of mirroring our build a little bit. They also do have Gravitational Missile too, but we decide to roll that and then use a Gravitational Missile of our own as they try to roll away. Fortunately, we do catch the roll, we go for our Ash of War, and then swap over to the Milady for the finish. And that's going to be it for the showcase. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. As always, I really appreciate everyone for sticking through to the end, and if you wouldn't mind considering subscribing, I would appreciate it. I hope you have a good day.